My brother stole my mother's fortune while I held her hand as she died, and he thought he'd gotten away with it. Let me take you back to where this all began. 6 years before that devastating moment, 6 years that would cost me everything, but teach me what truly matters. My name is Rebecca, and I used to be a nurse. A good one, actually. I loved my job at St. Mary's Hospital, loved the patients, the purpose, the feeling that I was making a difference. But when my mother was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, I didn't think twice. I walked away from my career, my income, my whole life, because she was my mom. She'd sacrificed everything for me and my brother Daniel growing up. Now it was my turn. Those 6 years, they weren't easy. Chemotherapy appointments at 6 in the morning. Sleepless nights when the pain got too bad. Changing bedpans, managing medications, holding her hair back when the nausea hit. I watched my savings disappear, month after month. I stopped going out with friends. I stopped dating. My entire world became that small bedroom where my mother fought her battle. And my brother Daniel? The golden child, the successful corporate lawyer with his perfect wife Vanessa and their perfect house in the suburbs? He was always too busy. Too many cases. Too many business trips. Too many excuses. Before we go any further into this, I just want to say, if you feel a connection to these stories, a small click on that like button and subscribe would mean more to me than you know. It lets me know I'm not just speaking into the void, that you're really here with me. Alright, let's continue. At first, I made excuses for him. Daniel's building his career, I told myself. He's under so much pressure. He'll come when he can. But months turned into years, and his visits never came. Not one. Not even on her birthday. Not even on Christmas. Mom never said anything directly, but I could see it in her eyes. Every time the phone rang, there was this little spark of hope, maybe it's Daniel. And every time it wasn't, a little piece of her dimmed. She'd ask me, casually, like it didn't matter. Have you heard from your brother lately? And I'd have to lie, tell her he'd texted me, said he was thinking of her. Anything to keep that hope alive. The truth was, Daniel had blocked me out of his life completely. My calls went to voicemail. My texts were ignored. It was like we didn't exist anymore. Like Mom didn't exist. But here's what breaks my heart the most. Even after everything, even knowing he'd abandoned her, my mother still loved him. Still talked about him with pride. Daniel's doing so well, she'd say, her voice weak but filled with a mother's unconditional love. He's always been so smart. So driven. I never told her the truth. Never told her that her golden boy couldn't even be bothered to send a card. What would be the point? She was dying. Let her have her illusions. In the final months, things got harder. The cancer spread to her bones, then her liver. The pain became unbearable. I had to quit the part-time work I'd been doing just to keep us afloat. We were living on her social security and my dwindling savings. I was exhausted. Physically, emotionally, financially. I had nothing left to give. But I gave it anyway. Because that's what love is, isn't it? It's not the grand gestures or the pretty words. It's showing up. Day after day. Night after night. When it's hard and thankless and breaks your heart into a million pieces. One night, about 2 weeks before the end, Mom was having a particularly bad episode. The morphine wasn't working. She was crying from the pain, gripping my hand so tight I thought my bones would break. And through her tears, she whispered something I'll never forget. Rebecca, sweetheart. I need to tell you something. I leaned in close, stroking her hair. I changed my will, she said. Made sure you're taken care of. You've given up so much for me. Daniel, he made his choices. But you've been my angel. My throat closed up. I wasn't doing this for money. I was doing it because she was my mother and I loved her. Don't talk like that, Mom, I whispered. You're going to be okay. But we both knew that wasn't true. 3 days later, on a rainy Tuesday morning in October, my mother took her last breath. I was holding her hand, just like I'd been holding it for 6 years. I'd been awake for 37 hours straight. I was wearing the same clothes I'd had on for 2 days. My hair was unwashed. My eyes were swollen from crying. And in that moment, as I watched the woman who gave me life slip away, I was completely alone. No Daniel. No Vanessa. No one. Just me, my mother's lifeless hand in mine, and the sound of rain against the window. I sat there for almost an hour before I could bring myself to call the hospice nurse. And even then, even in my grief, a small part of my mind wondered, should I call Daniel? Should I let him know? I decided yes. Despite everything, he deserved to know his mother was gone. I dialed his number with shaking hands. It rang 4 times before he picked up. Rebecca? His voice was irritated, like I'd interrupted something important. Daniel. Mom's gone. She passed away this morning. There was a pause. A long, cold pause. I see, he said. Not I'm sorry. Not are you okay? Just, I see. The funeral is on Friday, I continued, my voice breaking. I thought you'd want to. I'll be there, he cut me off. Text me the details. And he hung up. I stared at my phone, numb. That was it. That was his reaction to our mother's death. 10 seconds of cold, clinical conversation. I should have known then. Should have seen what was coming. But I was too broken, too exhausted, too deep in grief to see the storm that was about to destroy everything I had left. The funeral was on a gray Friday afternoon. I'd arranged everything myself, of course. Chose the casket, wrote the obituary, picked out Mom's favorite hymns. I paid for it all with the last of my savings and a credit card I knew I couldn't afford to max out. I stood in the funeral home that morning, greeting the few people who came. Mom's old neighbors. Some ladies from her church group. My old nursing colleagues who'd stayed in touch. Small, kind faces offering condolences I could barely hear through the fog in my head. And then, he walked in. Daniel. I hadn't seen my brother in person for almost 3 years. He looked exactly like success. Expensive charcoal suit, perfectly tailored. Italian leather shoes. Hair styled just right. His wife Vanessa was on his arm, dripping in designer everything, her face arranged in a practiced expression of sympathy that didn't quite reach her eyes. They made quite the entrance. I watched people turn to look, watched them register who he was. The son. The successful lawyer. The one who'd made something of himself. If only they knew. Daniel walked straight up to me, and for just a moment, for one single moment, I thought maybe I'd been wrong about him. Maybe grief had finally cracked through that cold exterior. He reached out and hugged me. Rebecca, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. I'm so sorry I couldn't be here sooner. Work has been absolutely insane. I stood stiff in his arms, unable to respond. Unable to process the performance I was witnessing. He pulled back, holding my shoulders, looking into my eyes with what I'm sure looked like genuine concern to everyone watching. How are you holding up? He asked. How was I holding up? Where had he been for 6 years? Where had he been when Mom cried for him? Where had he been when I was drowning in medical bills and exhaustion? But I didn't say any of that. This was Mom's funeral. I wouldn't make a scene. I'm managing, I whispered. Vanessa touched my arm with 2 fingers, like she was afraid grief might be contagious. It must have been so hard for you, she said in a syrupy voice. Taking care of her all alone like that. The words were right. But the tone was all wrong. There was something underneath it. Something that made my skin crawl. The service was beautiful. Simple, the way Mom would have wanted. I gave the eulogy, my voice breaking every few words. I talked about her strength, her kindness, her unwavering love for her children. Even Daniel. Especially Daniel. I saw him dab at his eyes with a handkerchief during my speech. Such a perfect performance. Afterward, at the reception, Daniel worked the room like he was at a networking event. Shaking hands, accepting condolences with solemn nods, talking about how much he'd loved his mother, how he wished he could have spent more time with her. I wanted to scream. But the worst was yet to come. 3 days later, I received a call from a lawyer I'd never heard of. Arnold Finch from Finch and Associates. Miss Rebecca Coleman, he asked in a crisp, professional tone. Yes? I'm calling regarding the estate of Margaret and Coleman. The will reading is scheduled for tomorrow at 10 a.m. Your attendance is required. My heart lifted slightly. This was what Mom had mentioned. The will she'd changed. She'd made sure I was taken care of. After 6 years of sacrifice, maybe I could finally breathe. Pay off the debts. Get back on my feet. I'll be there, I said. The law office was in a building I could never afford to enter under any other circumstances. All glass and steel and marble floors. I felt small walking through those doors in my only black dress, the same one I'd worn to the funeral. Daniel and Vanessa were already there, sitting in plush leather chairs. Daniel looked up when I entered, and something flickered across his face. Something I couldn't quite read. Rebecca, he nodded. Shall we get this over with? Mr. Finch was a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses and zero warmth in his demeanor. He gestured for us to sit, opened a folder on his desk, and began reading in a monotone voice. The last will and testament of Margaret and Coleman, dated March 18, 2022. My breath caught. March 2022. That was 3 years ago. 3 years before Mom died. Before she'd told me she'd changed everything. Something was wrong. Mr. Finch continued reading. The legal language washed over me, but the essence was clear. The house, the savings, the life insurance policy, Mom's small investment account, everything. Every single thing. To Daniel Michael Coleman. To my brother. I sat frozen, unable to process what I was hearing. And to my daughter, Rebecca and Coleman. Mr. Finch's voice droned on, I leave my personal effects and jewelry, with the hope that she will remember me fondly. Personal effects. Jewelry. That was it. 6 years. 6 years of my life, my career, my savings, my everything. For personal effects and jewelry. I looked at Daniel. He wasn't looking at me. He was staring straight ahead, his face carefully neutral. There must be a mistake, I heard myself say. My voice sounded far away. My mother told me, she said she'd changed the will. Mr. Finch looked up, his expression unchanged. This is the most recent will on file, Miss Coleman. Signed and witnessed according to all legal requirements. But she told me. I was standing now, my hands shaking. 2 weeks before she died, she told me she'd made sure I was taken care of. Rebecca. Daniel's voice cut through my panic. He stood up, adjusting his cufflinks. When he finally looked at me, his eyes were cold. So cold. Mom was on a lot of medication toward the end. Heavy painkillers. She probably didn't know what she was saying. She knew exactly what she was saying. My voice was rising. I could feel tears burning my eyes. She was lucid, she was. The will is very clear, Mr. Finch interrupted. Unless you have evidence of another will, more recently dated and properly executed, this document stands. I looked at Daniel again, really looked at him. And that's when I saw it. A tiny smile. Just a slight upturn at the corner of his mouth. There for a heartbeat, then gone. He knew. He knew exactly what he was doing. Daniel, I whispered. How could you? He picked up his briefcase, straightened his tie. Vanessa stood beside him, her arm linked through his. Look, Rebecca, he said, his voice taking on a patronizing tone. I know you're upset. But facts are facts. Mom made her choice. She always loved me more, you know that. The golden child, right? Isn't that what you used to call me? Each word was a knife. She put her trust in me to handle her estate properly. To make smart decisions with her legacy. You're a nurse, or you were. You don't know anything about managing money or property. She knew I'd be the responsible one. I couldn't breathe. The room was spinning. You weren't even there, I choked out. 6 years, Daniel. 6 years I gave up everything. And that was your choice, he said sharply. Nobody forced you to put your life on hold. You chose to play martyr. That's on you, not me. Vanessa tugged at his arm. Darling, we should go. We have that dinner reservation. Dinner reservation. They had plans. Casual plans, like this was just another Tuesday, like they hadn't just stolen everything from me. Daniel moved toward the door, then paused. He turned back, and the look on his face. I'll never forget it. Pity mixed with contempt. Mom left you the jewelry, Rebecca. That diamond bracelet alone is probably worth a couple thousand. Sell it if you need money so badly. And then they were gone. I stood there in that cold, expensive office, my entire world collapsing around me. Mr. Finch was gathering his papers, clearly eager to move on to his next appointment. Miss Coleman, if there's nothing else. I walked out in a daze. Made it to my car before the sobs came. Deep, wrenching sobs that tore through my chest. I had nothing. Less than nothing. I had debt. Credit cards maxed out from Mom's care. No job. No savings. No home, because the house was Daniel's now. I'd given 6 years of my life, and I'd been erased. Written out of my own mother's will like I'd never existed. But what I didn't know, what I couldn't have known sitting in that car, drowning in grief and betrayal, was that my mother had left me something far more valuable than money. She'd left me the truth. 2 weeks after the will reading, I was living in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Daniel's lawyer sent me an eviction notice. I had 30 days to clear out of Mom's house, his house now. 30 days to pack up a lifetime of memories and figure out where a broke, jobless woman with no references goes. I'd applied to every hospital, every clinic, every nursing home within 50 miles. But 6 years away from nursing? That's an eternity in healthcare. Technology had changed. Procedures had changed. And I had no recent experience to show for it. Nobody wanted me. I was surviving on credit cards and the few $100s I'd gotten from selling Mom's jewelry. The diamond bracelet Daniel had mentioned so casually? It was costume jewelry. Worth maybe $50. Everything else was the same. Sentimental value only. Even in death, even in what should have been her final gift to me, there was nothing. I spent my days packing boxes in that empty house. Mom's clothes. Her books. Her photographs. Each item was a memory, a reminder of everything I'd lost. I was in her bedroom, the room where she'd died, boxing up her nightstand when I found it. The drawer stuck a little as I pulled it open. I had to jiggle it, pull harder. And when it finally came free, something fell from underneath. A small book, taped to the bottom of the drawer. A journal. My hands trembled as I peeled away the tape. The cover was simple, leather-bound, worn at the edges. I opened it and saw my mother's handwriting. That familiar script I'd seen on birthday cards and grocery lists my whole life. The first entry was dated 4 years ago. March 3rd. Daniel visited today. First time in 8 months. Rebecca was at the pharmacy picking up my prescriptions. He seemed agitated, kept asking about my will, about my finances. Wanted to know how much the house is worth. Didn't ask how I was feeling. Didn't stay long. My heart started pounding. I flipped through more pages. Entry after entry. A record of visits I'd never known about. Daniel coming by when I wasn't there, always with the same questions. Always about money. About assets. About the will. Then I found the entry that made my blood run cold. July 19th. Daniel came again today. He brought papers. Said I needed to sign them, that it was just routine estate planning. I was so foggy from the pain medication. I could barely keep my eyes open. He kept pushing the pen into my hand. Rebecca, where were you? I needed you. I signed something. I don't know what. Daniel kept saying it's okay, Mom, this is for the best. But his eyes, there was something in his eyes that frightened me. I dropped the journal, my hands shaking so badly I could barely pick it back up. He'd done this. Daniel had manipulated our dying mother while she was medicated and vulnerable. While I was out running errands, taking care of her needs, he was stealing her fortune. I kept reading. There were more entries. More visits. More papers signed in drug-induced hazes. And then, near the end, an entry from 6 months before she died. Daniel's lawyer called today. Said I've been declared legally incompetent to manage my affairs. Said Daniel has power of attorney now. I don't remember signing anything like that. I tried to call my own lawyer, but I couldn't remember his name. Everything is so confused. I wanted to tell Rebecca, but Daniel said it would only upset her. Said she has enough to worry about taking care of me. Was he right? Am I losing my mind? Tears streamed down my face. She wasn't losing her mind. She was being stolen from. Manipulated. Abused. And I hadn't seen it. The final entries were the most heartbreaking. I wanted to change my will back. Wanted to make sure Rebecca gets everything. She sacrificed so much. But Daniel's lawyer says I can't. Says I'm not competent. Says any changes I try to make now won't be valid. I feel so helpless. So trapped. Rebecca, my sweet girl. I tried. I tried to protect you. I sat on the floor of my mother's bedroom, holding her journal to my chest, sobbing. She had tried to change the will. She had wanted me taken care of. But Daniel had made sure she couldn't. He'd isolated her. Manipulated her. Stolen from her while she was dying. And he'd done it all while I was busy being the good daughter, the caretaker, the one who actually loved her. I don't know how long I sat there. Hours maybe. But slowly, through the grief and rage, something else began to grow. Determination. I called every estate lawyer in the city. Most wouldn't take my call. The few who did told me the same thing. Fighting a will is expensive, time-consuming, and rarely successful. Especially when the other party has been declared incompetent. Especially when I had no money for legal fees. But one lawyer, an older woman named Patricia Holmes, listened to my whole story. Bring me that journal, she said quietly. And meet me at my office tomorrow morning. 9 a.m. sharp. I was there at 8:30. Patricia was in her 60s, gray hair pulled back in a neat bun, reading glasses perched on her nose. She read through Mom's journal slowly, carefully, her expression growing darker with each page. Finally, she looked up at me. This is elder abuse, she said. Financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. What your brother did, it's not just immoral, Rebecca. It's criminal. Hope flared in my chest for the first time in weeks. Can we fight the will? Patricia leaned back in her chair. We can try. But I'll be honest with you, it's going to be difficult. The will was executed 3 years ago. The probate process is almost complete, and challenging it will require resources She trailed off, looking at me. At my worn clothes. My desperate eyes. I can't pay you, I admitted. Not up front. I have nothing. She was quiet for a long moment, then she smiled. A small, fierce smile. I've been practicing law for 38 years, she said. And I've seen a lot of greedy, entitled people get away with a lot of terrible things. I'm tired of it. We'll work on contingency. If we win, I take a percentage. If we lose, well, at least we tried. But there's something else. Something in the back of my mind from Mom's journal entries. She mentioned Daniel's lawyer multiple times. The same lawyer who'd been at the will reading. Arnold Finch. I went home and did something I should have done weeks ago. I googled my brother. And I found something interesting. Daniel worked at Morrison, Pierce, and Associates. A big corporate law firm downtown. Their website showed off their team, their cases, their success rate. But what really caught my attention was a small news article from 6 months ago. Buried on page 3 of the business section. Morrison Pierce under investigation for client trust fund discrepancies. I dug deeper. Spent hours going through public records, court filings, news archives. And slowly, a pattern emerged. Daniel's firm was being investigated for mishandling client funds. Several lawyers had been implicated. The investigation was ongoing. And Daniel's name appeared in the case files. Not prominently. Not obviously. But it was there. My brother, the golden child, the successful corporate lawyer, was a thief. Not just of our mother's money. He was stealing from his clients too. I called Patricia. I found something, I said. Something big. Over the next week, we worked together. Patricia had connections, resources I didn't have. She requested documents. Filed motions. Dug into Daniel's financial records. And we found it. The power of attorney Daniel had gotten Mom to sign. It was dated 2 weeks after her doctor had prescribed her strongest pain medication. The medication that left her confused and disoriented. The will he'd produced? It was dated 3 days after that. And the lawyer who'd witnessed both documents? Arnold Finch, who happened to be Daniel's college roommate. We have a case, Patricia said, her eyes gleaming. A strong case. But Rebecca, this is going to get ugly. Your brother will go down without a fight. I thought about my mother. About 6 years of sacrifice. About being erased and dismissed and told I didn't matter. Let it get ugly, I said. I'm ready. But I wasn't just ready to fight for the inheritance. I was ready to destroy the man who'd destroyed everything I loved. And I was about to find out that Daniel had made one critical mistake. He'd underestimated me. Patricia filed our motion to contest the will on a Wednesday morning. By Wednesday afternoon, Daniel's lawyer called me. Not Arnold Finch this time, a different lawyer. A attack dog from one of the biggest firms in the state. Miss Coleman, he said in a voice dripping with condescension. My client, Mr. Daniel Coleman, is extremely disappointed that you've chosen to pursue this frivolous litigation. He's prepared to offer you a settlement. $20,000. Take it, and we can all move on. $20,000. Less than 1% of what Mom's estate was worth. Tell your client, I said slowly, that he can take his settlement and shove it. I hung up. Patricia smiled when I told her. Good, she said. Now they know you're serious. Now the real game begins. She was right. Over the next 2 weeks, Daniel's lawyers tried everything. Intimidation tactics. Delay motions. Character attacks. They painted me as a bitter, greedy woman who'd neglected her duties as a caregiver and was now trying to profit from her mother's death. It hurt. Every word hurt. But I had something they didn't expect. I had the truth. And I was about to get more of it. See, while Patricia was handling the legal battle over Mom's estate, I'd been doing some investigating of my own. I couldn't stop thinking about that news article. The investigation into Daniel's law firm. I reached out to a journalist who'd written several pieces about the case. Her name was Sarah Chen, and she specialized in corporate fraud investigations. We met at a coffee shop downtown. She was younger than I expected, sharp eyes behind dark-rimmed glasses, notepad already out. You said you have information about the Morrison Pierce case? She asked. I think my brother is involved, I said. Daniel Coleman. He's a junior partner there. Her eyebrows shot up. Daniel Coleman? Oh, I know that name. She pulled out her laptop, typed rapidly, then turned the screen toward me. Your brother has been flying under the radar, but he's connected to some very questionable transactions. Client trust funds that went missing. Settlements that were never properly distributed. The firm is trying to pin it all on one senior partner who conveniently retired last year. But the money trail, it leads to several people, including your brother. My heart was racing. Can you prove it? I'm working on it, Sarah said. But these things take time. Corporate lawyers are good at covering their tracks. I'd need internal documents, emails, bank records. An idea formed in my mind. Dangerous. Possibly illegal. But desperate times. What if I could get you access to his files? Sarah leaned back, studying me. How? Daniel still has keys to Mom's house. He comes by sometimes to go through things, decide what he wants to keep. He uses the home office. Brings his briefcase. Works there because Vanessa hates when he brings work home to their place. I'd seen him there twice in the past week, through the window. Sitting at Mom's desk like he owned it. Which, legally, he did. If I could get into his briefcase. Stop, Sarah held up a hand. I can't be involved in anything illegal. But, if documents were to somehow make their way to me through anonymous channels, well, a journalist has to follow the story wherever it leads. We looked at each other. Understanding passed between us. 3 days later, I was sitting in my car outside Mom's house. Daniel's house, at 9 p.m. I'd been tracking his patterns. He always came by on Thursday nights. Always left around 8:30. Always locked up and left. But this time I'd done something different. Earlier that day, I'd gone to the house during the afternoon. I still had my key. Daniel hadn't changed the locks yet. I'd gone to the home office and loosened one of the window latches. Just enough. Just barely. Now, 2 hours after Daniel had left, I sat in my car, heart pounding, knowing what I was about to do could get me arrested. But thinking about Mom's journal. About 6 years of my life. About Daniel's smug face at the will reading. I got out of the car. The window opened silently. I climbed through, feeling like a criminal in my own mother's house. The office was dark. I used my phone's flashlight, keeping it low. Daniel's briefcase was there. He'd left it. Probably figured it was safe in his house. I opened it with shaking hands. Inside were files. So many files. Client names I didn't recognize. Account numbers. Transactions. And emails. Printed emails between Daniel and Arnold Finch, between Daniel and other lawyers at his firm. I started photographing everything, page after page. My hands were trembling so badly I had to redo some shots. And then I found it. An email thread between Daniel and Finch, dated 4 years ago. Arnold, need your help with a family matter. Mother's estate. Sister is the caretaker type, will expect inheritance. Need to make sure assets are properly allocated. You know what I mean. We go back. You owe me one. D. And Finch's response. Say no more. Get her to sign the POA while she's medicated. I'll backdate if necessary. Then we move on the will. Your sister won't know what hit her. Standard fee applies. There it was. Written proof of conspiracy. Of fraud. Of everything. I photographed it all. Every single page. I was about to close the briefcase when I saw another folder. This one labeled Settlement Accounts, Confidential. Inside were bank statements. Transfers. Dozens of them. Money moving from client settlement accounts into personal accounts. Into Daniel's accounts. My brother wasn't just a thief. He was stealing from people who'd trusted him. Accident victims. Divorce clients. People who were already vulnerable. Just like he'd stolen from Mom. I photographed everything, then carefully put it all back exactly as I'd found it. Closed the briefcase. Climbed back out the window. I sat in my car for 10 minutes, trying to calm my racing heart. Then I drove to a 24-hour print shop, printed everything, made copies, and put them in 3 separate envelopes. One went to Sarah Chan, dropped in her mailbox at 2 a.m. One went to Patricia Holmes, delivered to her office mail slot before dawn. And one went to the State Bar Association's ethics hotline, mailed from a post office 2 towns over. I went home and waited. It took 3 days. 3 days before Sarah's article hit. Corporate lawyer accused of massive client trust fund theft. Exclusive documents reveal years of fraud. Daniel's face was on the front page of the business section. By noon, his firm had issued a statement. We are shocked and appalled by these allegations. Mr. Coleman has been placed on immediate administrative leave pending investigation. By 5 p.m., the State Bar had announced a formal ethics investigation. By 8 p.m., the local news was running the story. And they'd made the connection. Lawyer under investigation also named an estate dispute with sister. My phone started ringing. Reporters. Old friends. People I hadn't heard from in years. I ignored them all. Except one call. Daniel. I almost didn't answer. But something made me pick up. You. His voice was shaking with rage. You did this. You broke into my briefcase. You stole confidential documents. I'll have you arrested. I'll sue you for everything. Everything? I laughed. A cold, bitter laugh. Daniel, I have nothing. You made sure of that. Remember? Those documents were privileged. Attorney-client. Were they privileged when you and Finch conspired to defraud our dying mother? My voice was ice. Were they privileged when you stole from your own clients? Tell me, Daniel, how does it feel? How does what feel? To lose everything. There was a long silence. This isn't over, he finally said. You're right, I replied. It's not. Because tomorrow, Patricia is filing a criminal complaint for elder abuse and fraud. And the DA's office is very interested in Mom's journal. Very interested in a pattern of exploitation. I could hear his breathing. Rapid. Panicked. And Daniel? That article Sarah wrote? That's just part 1. She's working on part 2. All about how you manipulated our mother while she was dying. How you forged documents. How you got your college buddy to help you steal her estate. That one comes out next week. Rebecca. His voice cracked. Please. We can work this out. I can. I can split the estate with you. 50-50. Just make this go away. Now he wanted to negotiate. Now he wanted to share. It's too late for that, I said softly. You had your chance to do the right thing. You chose to be cruel instead. You chose to mock me, to dismiss my sacrifice, to spit on everything Mom and I shared. So now you get to live with the consequences. You're destroying my life. No, Daniel. I'm just holding up a mirror. You destroyed your own life the moment you decided money was more important than family. More important than integrity. More important than your own dying mother. I hung up. And for the first time in months, I smiled. 2 days later, Vanessa filed for divorce. Apparently, being married to a disgraced lawyer under criminal investigation wasn't the lifestyle she'd signed up for. Within a week, Daniel's firm fired him. Not suspended. Fired. The state bar opened a formal disbarment proceeding. And Patricia's motion to void the will based on fraud and undue influence? The judge fast-tracked it. But I wasn't done yet, because Daniel had taught me something important. When someone tries to bury you, make sure they don't realize you're a seed. The disbarment hearing was held on a cold morning in February. Almost 4 months after Mom's funeral. 4 months that had felt like a lifetime. I sat in the gallery, 3rd row back. Not too close. Not too far. Just close enough to watch every moment of Daniel's fall. He sat at the defendant's table in a suit that didn't fit quite right anymore. He'd lost weight. His face was drawn, gray. The golden boy shine had worn off completely. Vanessa wasn't there. She'd taken everything in the divorce. The house. The cars. Most of his savings. Apparently, their prenup had a clause about criminal activity. Smart woman. The state bar prosecutor laid it out methodically. Client after client who'd trusted Daniel with settlement money. Accident victims who'd never received their full compensation. A widow whose late husband's life insurance payout had been skimmed. An elderly man's trust fund that had somehow shrunk by 40% under Daniel's management. The evidence was overwhelming. Bank records. Emails. Testimony from forensic accountants. Daniel's lawyer tried to claim it was all a misunderstanding. Accounting errors. Clerical mistakes. But you can't explain away dozens of deliberate transfers to your personal account as clerical mistakes. The panel of judges listened. Took notes. Their faces remained neutral, but I could see the disgust in their eyes. When they asked Daniel if he had anything to say in his own defense, he stood up slowly. I made mistakes, he said. His voice was barely audible. I got in over my head financially. My wife, ex-wife, she had expensive tastes. I was trying to maintain a lifestyle I couldn't afford. I know that's not an excuse. I know I hurt people. I'm sorry. Sorry. Such a small word for such enormous damage. The chief judge removed her glasses. Mr. Coleman, you didn't just hurt people financially. You violated a sacred trust. Lawyers are entrusted with their clients' most vulnerable moments. Their pain. Their losses. Their hope for justice. And you exploited that trust for personal gain. You are a disgrace to this profession. 3 hours later, the panel returned with their decision. Disbarred. Permanently. No possibility of reinstatement. Daniel walked out of that hearing room no longer a lawyer. Just a man who destroyed his own life for money he didn't even get to keep. I didn't speak to him. Didn't even look at him as he passed. I had somewhere else to be. The following week, the probate court hearing on Mom's estate took place. This time, the courtroom was more crowded. Sarah Chen was there, notepad ready. Several of Daniel's former clients had shown up, wanting to see justice served. And Daniel was there, sitting alone on his side of the room. No Vanessa. No expensive lawyers. Just a public defender who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Patricia stood up, commanding the room with her presence. Your Honor, the evidence is clear and irrefutable. Margaret Coleman's will was obtained through fraud, coercion, and exploitation of a vulnerable adult. The defendant used his position as her son to manipulate her while she was heavily medicated and suffering from a terminal illness. He conspired with a lawyer, Arnold Finch, to manufacture documents and circumvent her true wishes. She presented Mom's journal. Medical records showing the dosages of pain medication Mom had been on when she'd signed the documents. Expert testimony about competency. And then she presented the smoking gun. The emails between Daniel and Finch. The judge read them silently. His jaw tightened. When he looked up at Daniel, there was no mercy in his eyes. Mr. Coleman, in my 30 years on the bench, I have seen many examples of human greed. But what you did to your own mother while she lay dying, while your sister sacrificed everything to care for her, is among the most morally reprehensible acts I have ever encountered. Daniel stared at the floor. The will dated March 18 is hereby declared void due to fraud and undue influence. The court will reconstruct Mrs. Coleman's true testamentary intent based on her previous wills, her journal entries, and the testimony provided. He paused, looking directly at me. It is clear that Margaret Coleman intended for her estate to be divided equally between her two children. However, given the defendant's criminal conduct and exploitation, I am invoking the state's Slayer statute and forfeiture provisions. Daniel Coleman is hereby barred from inheriting any portion of his mother's estate. My breath caught. The entire estate, the house, the financial accounts, the life insurance proceeds, all assets, are awarded to Rebecca Coleman. Furthermore, Daniel Coleman is ordered to pay restitution for legal fees and emotional distress. The gavel came down. I sat there, unable to move, unable to process what had just happened. Patricia squeezed my hand. You won, she whispered. You won everything. But as I looked across the courtroom at Daniel, slumped in his chair, I realized something. I hadn't won because I got the money. I'd won because the truth had come out. Because Mom's voice, even from beyond the grave, had been heard. Because justice, real justice, had finally been served. Over the next few months, I began to rebuild. I paid off all the debts. Every credit card. Every medical bill. Every penny I'd borrowed to keep us afloat during Mom's final years. I put the house on the market. Too many memories. Too much pain. It sold quickly. And then I did something Mom would have loved. I used part of the inheritance to create the Margaret Coleman Hospice Care Center. A place where terminal patients could receive end-of-life care with dignity. Where families like mine could get support. Where caregivers could find resources, respite, counseling. Where no one would have to face those final months alone and afraid. The center opened 10 months after Mom's death. It was small at first. Just 6 beds. A small staff. But it was beautiful, peaceful, filled with light. I didn't go back to nursing at a hospital. Instead, I worked at the hospice center. Hands-on. Direct care. Because I understood now what those final days meant. What they required. Not just medical skill, but presence. Love. Witness. I was there the day we admitted our first patient. An elderly man named Robert whose children lived across the country and couldn't take time off work. I held his hand in those final hours. Just like I'd held Mom's. And when he passed, peacefully, with someone who cared beside him, I knew this was what Mom had wanted all along. Not money. Not revenge. Just love. And purpose. And making sure no one else suffered alone. As for Daniel? I heard through mutual acquaintances that he'd taken a job at a retail store. Stocking shelves. Making minimum wage. Living in a studio apartment he could barely afford. His legal debts would follow him for years. The restitution to his former clients. The fines from the state bar. The back taxes he owed from all that stolen money. He'd tried to reach out to me once. A letter, forwarded through Patricia's office. Dear Rebecca, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know I destroyed everything. I was consumed by greed, by ego, by the need to appear successful. I lost sight of what really mattered. I hurt Mom. I hurt you. I hurt so many people. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I just wanted you to know. I'm sorry. I'm truly sorry. Daniel. I read it once. Then I put it in a drawer. Maybe someday I'd forgive him. Maybe someday the anger would fade enough for me to see him as just a broken man who made terrible choices. But not today. Today, I had patients to care for, families to support, a legacy to honor. 1 year after Mom's death, on the anniversary, I stood in the hospice center's garden. We'd planted roses. Mom's favorite. Sarah Chen had come by. Her final article, From Betrayal to Purpose, How One Woman Turned Tragedy into Hope, had just been published. It told the whole story. Mom's sacrifice, Daniel's betrayal, the legal battle, and the hospice center that rose from the ashes. You've built something remarkable here, Sarah said, standing beside me in the garden. Mom built it, I replied. I'm just bringing her vision to life. We stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't found that journal? Sarah asked. I thought about it. About how close I'd come to just giving up, accepting defeat, walking away with nothing. I think about it sometimes, I admitted. But then I realize. Mom made sure I'd find it. She hid it where only I would look, where only someone who truly knew her, who'd spent real time with her, would discover it. One last gift, I agreed. That evening, I sat in my small apartment. Not fancy, not expensive, but mine, paid for with honest money and a clear conscience. I opened Mom's journal one more time. Read her words again. Her love, her regret that she couldn't protect me, her pride in the daughter I'd been. And on the last page, an entry I'd read 100 times but never tired of. Rebecca, my darling girl. If you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm so sorry I couldn't stop what Daniel has planned. I'm sorry I couldn't be stronger, clearer, more able to fight back. But know this, you are my greatest achievement. Not the house, not the money, not any material thing. You. Your kindness. Your strength. Your pure, loving heart. That's my real legacy. And nothing your brother does can take that away. I love you. Always. Mom. I closed the journal gently and held it to my heart. I know, Mom, I whispered. I know. And in that moment, I understood something profound. Daniel had taken so much. But he couldn't take what really mattered. He couldn't take the 6 years I'd spent with Mom. The conversations. The small moments of laughter between the pain. The way she'd squeeze my hand 3 times, our secret code for I love you. He couldn't take the person those years had shaped me into. Stronger. Wiser. More compassionate. He couldn't take my integrity. My character. My soul. In trying to destroy me, he'd only destroyed himself. And in trying to erase me from Mom's legacy, he'd ensured that her true legacy, love, sacrifice, and caring for others, would live on through me. Money comes and goes. Houses are just buildings. Possessions are just things. But who you are when no one's watching, how you treat people when they're vulnerable, whether you choose love or greed when the choice is yours, that's what lasts. That's what matters. That's what builds a life worth living. Mom taught me that. Not with her money. With her love. And that's an inheritance no one can ever steal. Thank you for walking this difficult road with me to the very end. If this story resonated with you, you can support our community by sending a super thanks. It helps me continue to bring these important stories to light. On the screen now are 2 more stories that I know will touch your soul. I'll see you in the next one. Stay strong.